Hey everyone, welcome back. So, it's always struck me as really peculiar that there are some characters who have hardly any powers at all, right? Or they have no powers at all, and yet they're some of the most popular characters of all time. And I suppose just by natural default, you would look at Batman as an example because Batman has no powers, just has a lot of gadgets, but no powers. And he's got a cool costume, fair enough. But in terms of how you can draw Batman, because of a lack of powers, you are limited as to how cool you can make him. Although, look, the shroud, his cowl, his cape, it makes him look very cool, no doubt. But then you take a character like Archangel, who is the alter ego of Warren Worthington III. I would say one of the coolest superhero characters, mutant or otherwise, ever created. Not so much the Angel character. I was never a fan of Angel when he had his normal wings and normal skin tone, and he always had a pretty cool costume, I thought. But I was never really into the idea of the Angel himself. However, when he was abducted by Apocalypse and turned into one of the horsemen of the Apocalypse, and I think his moniker was Death, he was given these organic steel wings. His skin turned blue, and he got, in my opinion, one of the best, most kick-ass costumes that I've seen up to that point in a long time. And this image right here, it's such a cool image. But it's not just about the image. I mean, it's a cool image, but to go with this image, Archangel has some amazing powers. Archangel, also known as Warren Worthington III, used to be known as Angel. And in the Angel guise, he had hollow bones, which allowed him to have a lighter body mass, hardly any fat on his body, so he was almost pure muscular, muscle. And he had these very strong, powerful wings, which, coupled with his, hollow bones and his lack of body fat overall, allowed him to fly through the air at very high speeds with the greatest of ease. And yeah, that was cool. A character that can fly with wings, pretty cool. But it never appealed to me in the same way, say, as Hawkman from the DC comics, because Hawkman, of course, is a lot more of a violent character. He is. I mean, he's a warrior. He's a Thanagarian warrior, and he has weaponry, and he uses a anti-gravity belt. I suppose the wings are for sure more than anything else. Whereas with the Warren's wings as the angel, they were his main form of transport. But I mean, he used to fly around and then engage people in combat with his hands and feet. I mean, he didn't really have much of a healing factor at that time. He was a pretty vulnerable character, actually. In all honesty, I always viewed him as being a bit of a liability. I mean, yes, he can fly and possibly carry one or two people around, but beyond that, I never really saw the applicability of Angel as compared to, say, Wolverine. I mean, hands down, or Beast, or Cyclops. I always thought he was one of the weakest characters of X Factor when that comic was a pretty big thing in the 80s. But then when he was abducted by Apocalypse and transformed in order to become one of Apocalypse's four horsemen, he was given the moniker of Death. And in order to go with that uh, particular name that he was presented with, he was given these organic steel wings, which had these razor sharp tips that could be fired. His wingtips could be fired at opponents, and those wingtips would basically have a toxin which would paralyze whoever they came in contact with. I mean, if they didn't kill you first, if you get stabbed by a flying blade through the heart, you're going to probably die. But on top of that, he had much more higher enhanced stamina and strength, and his healing factor went through the roof. Not on the same level as say, Wolverine or Deadpool or Sabretooth, but much, much stronger than before. So he could stay in a fight much, much longer. And he got blue skin and this really amazing kick-ass costume of blue and purple, which almost harkened back to the days of the 80s, early 80s. But it was a really cool costume, and this was in the '90s, of course, when this happened. But it was just a really really cool costume, coupled with these amazing new powers and these very scary looking razor sharp wings, which at that point I think made Warren Worthington III a very formidable character indeed. In fact, I mean, think about this. You've got basically this angel of death character now who swoops through the air and cuts you in half with his very large wings. Anyone who came into contact with a character like that, I think, would definitely think twice. He has the reach, he has the lethal applicability now of wings that can do more than just carry him through the air. I mean, yeah, his wings as Angel were pretty strong. They could break people's arms and push them through a window or something. But these wings were on a different level altogether. And it gave, I mean, Archangel, I think, had something that a lot of characters, I suppose, didn't have. He was a very tortured soul. His wings also, whilst usually under his control, they would sometimes take on a life of their own if he was in turmoil. If he was emotionally upset, the wings would actually lash out at people around him or at opponents. They were a very dangerous thing to have on you anyway. And I think that gave Warren Worthington a real interesting twist in terms of this anguish that he was going through, trying to deal with his new powers and trying to keep his wings in check. So I think the character's interest level just went through the roof when Apocalypse transformed him into Archangel. But having said all of the above, it still boils down to the fact that Archangel just never seems to get the popularity that I think he's due. I think he trumps a lot of characters in terms of sheer cool factor. Um, I mean, let's take, for example, someone like Star Lord of the Guardians of the Galaxy fame, right? Or even Groot, even Drax. In fact, take the whole roster of the Guardians of the Galaxy who've had their own movie, number of movies, by the way. They've had crossovers, etc., etc. And then you put this guy, Archangel, with his deadly metal wings. And I'm just talking about the cool factor alone. I'm just talking about in terms of when you look at a character and you see the panels, the comic book panels, and you see him swooping in, swooping out, doing those magnificent poses, getting into battles where his wings are just out of control. This is this is art. I mean, the character, I think, the depiction of the character is basically art of the highest form, as far as comic books are concerned, at least anyway. There's so much effort and thought that's been put into this character. I'm not saying that the Guardians. I mean, I'm not picking on the Guardians of the Galaxy. I'm not. It's just, let's face facts. The Guardians of the Galaxy had their own run in the '90s, and they had completely different characters to what they have right now in the movies. Right? They had a character called Vance Astrovic, who was te, like a telekinetic guy who could move things with his mind, and he's nowhere to be seen in the current iteration of the Guardians. But they were not that popular, to be completely honest. They weren't flying off shelves. They weren't stacked up everywhere. You found them in a few comic book shops here and there, but the popularity that they've gained through the movies. I mean, it makes you wonder actually how what is the what is the elimination process at Marvel Studios? Like, how do they pick superheroes that they're going to bring onto the big screen and then suddenly catapult into superstardom? What is it? I mean, as far as it can't be popularity in terms of, say, the Guardians of the Galaxy. They've never reached the heights of, say, the Avengers or the Justice League or the X-Men. They just haven't. That's the truth. They haven't. But the X Factor comic was actually pretty popular, and X-Men has always been pretty popular, right? And mutants generally had a pretty big sort of like surge of popularity in the '80s, which I think carried on into the '90s with the Jim Lee's X-Men. So that popularity overall with the idea of these characters has been there. But for some reason, even though Archangel or Angel has been portrayed in the movies, it's just never kicked off. Why doesn't Archangel have again, I mentioned this in one of the earlier videos that I did. This is one of those prime characters that would be so suited to a R rating movie with those wings, with that with that overall atmosphere of this character. You know, you could see him going around cutting people in half and just being that angel of death. You know, bloodthirsty angel of death. Cover his costume in blood and gore. Let him go and fight evil sort of, you know, monsters out to take the world. It would be amazing, absolutely amazing. But I don't think it's going to happen anytime soon, which is a real shame because, like I say, it's the potential is there. The potential is there, but it looks like that Marvel Studios has not yet reached that stage of maturity where they would consider a character like this. Um, you know, it makes you wonder, isn't it? It really does. I mean, I've always liked this character, but I imagine a lot of people maybe don't like him as much as I do, or maybe people do. Maybe people do, but they are limited in terms of how much support they can give this character, in light of how much exposure the character actually has. Or am I crazy? Am I the only one who thinks that this character is one of the coolest characters to ever come out of the hallowed halls of Marvel Comics? Uh, maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe there are others out there like me who feel the same way. But yeah, let me know in the comments, guys, if you agree with me about the coolness and the lack of utilization of this character, not only in the comic books but certainly in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think that this costume, these wings, should be out there on the big screen. And then I think if someone does it right, it could be such an attention grabber, such a money maker that you know it'd be something. But anyhow, yeah, that's my two pennies worth rambling opinion about Archangel, one of the coolest characters, one of the coolest unrecognized characters to come out of Marvel, and he gets his I hope he gets his you know, time in the limelight. But as ever, guys, thank you so much for tuning in. Really appreciate it. Like and subscribe if you will. Comment below if you want to, and I will see you in the next one.